Hi everyone, and welcome to The Advocate. I'm your host, Glenn Allen. Tonight on the show, we're talking post-traumatic stress disorder in policing. And with me on the show tonight, I have two men who know exactly what that is all about. Joining me on the panel tonight, Gary Ruby. And Gary is a gentleman who spent 28 years as a police officer, 19 of those in plain clothes, in covert, and all alone. We're going to get to Gary in just a minute. My other guest is Jimmy Bremner, and a lot of people will know Jimmy. Jimmy's been out and about talking about post-traumatic stress disorder for a few years now, and Jimmy was the technical consultant for the television show Flashpoint, and a lot of Jimmy's background comes from over 25 years of his experience with a Metropolitan Police Service as a uniform patrol, SWAT team leader, tactical trainer, and he has just recently returned to the bomb squad, and we're going to get to Jimmy. Actually, that's kind of where I want to start. I want to talk about both your stories to begin the program, and I'd like to talk to you, Jim, and welcome both of you to the program as we do this. But it's for you, it's kind of full circle, because you know you started in uniform and you worked your way through all those years, and you had your post-traumatic stress disorder, and just recently you returned back to the bomb squad. Take us through your story.
Yes, it is full circle, and again, if we go back almost 14 years now, 1999, my particular team was involved in 3 shootings in a period of about, we'll say 5 months. There was, we were under, I believe, 4 SIU investigations at the time. And in 1999, the New Year's Eve, I found myself at St. Michael's Hospital with my team, and we were dealing with a hostage situation. And within about 15 to 20 minutes, that hostage taker would be dead as a result of my actions and the interaction with him and the threat. And I went home to an empty house because it was New Year's, and the cop lifestyle. Often we're not home on birthdays and Christmas and this type of thing as duty calls. So generally we ask, take our wives, take the kids to a neighbor's house or this type of thing, and so I went home to an empty house, and I started to drink, and then 2 days later, we would find ourselves in another hostage situation and another shooting. And shortly after that, as it goes, I'd find myself off the team and assigned to other duties, and even to this day, I don't know the significance of losing your connection with your close peers. I mean, it's hard to say what was more traumatic. It's almost like a secondary injury, not to be with the people that that you support, and as a leader, you feel responsible for them.
Absolutely. If I can jump in just for a second, Jim, we talk about how, and we will talk about more in depth about post-traumatic stress disorder. But when you went home to that empty house, for an officer, and really anybody in that field, the most important thing at that moment was for you to get help. It's really important for someone who has just gone through a traumatic event like that, in order to prevent the symptoms in order to prevent the symptoms to take hold. It's so important for you to get treatment right away, and you didn't. You went home to an empty house, and there is no follow-up within the police force which is something else we'll talk about later on.
Well, again, we've come a long way in 14 years. Back then, you know, the first thing that happens, again, because it's going to be investigated, is everybody is separated for exclusion of witnesses and this type of thing. And that's good on the side of investigating and finding out what happened, but it's bad on the human side, because really we're social animals, and in times of stress what we need is each other. And so that's really when it starts to onset itself. And again, you know, especially in the tactical world, they'll say, well, you know, well, you guys debrief. Well, we debrief about the mechanics of it. You know, it's this type of weapon that's, you know, many feet from the individual, and the round consisted of this, and you know, it's gas operated, air cooled, semi-automatic. You know, but it has nothing to do with the emotion.
No emotion, no feeling,
right.
No nothing.
And so even though we debrief, you still don't have an emotional debriefing. So you constantly carry these feelings. And, you know, unfortunately, even today in the police circles, if you say that I feel badly or I'm sad, or, you know, I went home and I cried, it's looked upon as a weakness. And so what happened, it took 4 years for the wheels to fall off the cart for me. And so in 2004, I would find myself with a post-traumatic stress issue that was, you know, compounded with dependency with alcohol. And at that point, I was drinking, hoping that I wouldn't wake up, and you know, I would find myself sleeping in parks and you know, outside. Wake up and, hey, I'm outside. And you know, I'd go back to work in the morning. But finally, as a result of an impaired driving arrest, it would get me to Homewood eventually, and ultimately 14 years later, or 10 years later now, to here.
But you're a cop, man. You're a cop, and you're a guy. You're supposed to be a tough guy. There's people watching this show that are just going, "Come on, you suck it up." What do you say to that?
I would say that somebody that has that suck it up mentality has probably not been exposed to stress, or is really not in touch with the fact that you're human. I'm a product of what they call stress inoculation training. I spent thousands and thousands of hours being brought to, you know, the limit of my ability. But there is no amount of training. There's no amount of training that can separate you from your human component. And at some point, that human part of us is going to raise its head, and it does. And you know, the old thing you learn as a kid: sticks and stones will break your bones, but names will never. Well, it actually is the names. It actually is the emotions and feelings. And where a physical wound is transient, it scars over. The emotional wound stays around for a long, long time.
And especially when there's already pre-existing emotional wounds when it comes to other traumas, whether someone is a product of childhood sexual abuse, physical abuse, whatever the case may be. Gary, I want to bring you into the conversation here. As I mentioned off the top, Gary's spent 28 years as a police officer, 19 of those undercover. And the other part that I wanted to bring into the program now, in 2009, after 25 years of service, Gary, you were almost knocked into your grave by the crippling effects of PTSD-related depression, concurrent disorders, and related cross addictions, which I want you to talk about. Suicide attempts, your own arrests, and incarceration, to an eventual treatment, to your treatment and recovery. And now your story and triumph, redemption, and hope, you're out telling people as well. First of all, I would be remiss if we could get first Jimmy's book. That's Jimmy's book, Cracking the Armor, that's out there. Of course, this, Gary, is a book that that you did with your dad, and it's called Out on a Cliff, and but let's we'll get to that as well. But in 2009, Bud, after a career, you're a distinguished award-winning police officer, decorated police officer. And again, I'll put it to you the way I did Gary. I mean, you're man's man. You're a tough guy. And this hit you.
Yeah, it almost knocked me into my grave. I mean, my post-traumatic in relation to Jimmy's is different in the sense that there were a couple of traumatic incidents that I dealt with in my career. However, my diagnosis was one of accumulative post-traumatic stress disorder. So,
what does that mean?
Well, basically that there was a compilation of traumatic events, whether they were large or small, that I was able to, you know, bury beneath the surface and drink or drug away, and certainly never talked about it to anyone. And eventually, it kind of all came to the surface with one small episode, and my bubble burst. I was told basically that it was like a plugged up bathtub through my whole career, being filled up with one drop of water at a time, and then that final drop of water overflowed my bathtub. So that kind of a visualization for me made sense. I understood what that meant. You know, there's a couple of incidents I could refer to. I was attacked in the bathroom of a strip club by a knife-wielding man that I was trying to arrest back in 1989. There's a couple of years that I worked in child pornography, which were, you know, when I thought I'd seen just about every disturbing thing I could possibly imagine in policing, you know, that was to take it to the next level. That was actually anything I could believe.
Actually, before you get into that, because I don't want to interrupt that story, and Harmony, I know I'm a little bit early for this break, but let's break right now, and we'll come back to that, because it's this is a big part of your fall, and I want to get into that when we come back. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to get into Gary's past, and also what I touched on before, pre-existing incidents from the past meet the future or the present, and when those two collide, it's a train wreck. So PTSD meets the past, and how it can, the devastating effects it can have on a human life. You're watching The Advocate with Glenn Allen, back right after this. Welcome back to The Advocate. I'm your host, Glenn Allen. With me, Jimmy Bremner. Was it 25 years? You're in your 25th year?
I'm in my 30th now.
You're in your 30th year now. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
While, so.
Yeah, your 30th year as a police officer. Out the Toronto way.
Yes.
Yes. And Gary Ruby spent 28 years with Peel. And before the break, we were talking about, today we're talking about PTSD and policing. And as a former correctional officer, we see the machismo and, you know, you got to suck it up and be tough and stuff like this. Because more guys are talking about, especially you know, coming forward with sexual abuse as kids, and more men are speaking up about their depression and realizing that it's actually tougher to come forward and shed some tears and go get counseling and things. As both of you know, as all three of us know now, we all spent many years out there not knowing that. But before, excuse me, before we went to break, Gary was talking about his fall, which is, I like how you put it. the crippling effects of PTSD, because they were. And you're right. I mean, when you look at what PTSD, no matter what form, I had my sexual abuse as a kid, and going through it as with concussions. There's actually PTSD that goes along with that. A lot of people don't understand that, and we're going to talk a little bit about symptoms and what you can do, what you can look for, and what have you in just a few minutes. But before we went to break, Gary, you were talking about a point in your life where, as a police officer, having gone through so many different traumatic events, but one in particular, when your force, the Peel Regional Police Force, got, well, I'll let you tell the story, but you guys got a child pornography unit, and you served on that unit. And this is when your past met the present, and those two trains were destined to crash.
Yeah, it's an interesting parallel. The unit that I was assigned to work for did not have a position that was called a lure, which was somebody that would go online as a 12-year-old covert female or young boy and put yourself into predicated chat rooms and in an attempt to lure offenders, pedophilic offenders. So, being in that situation, I think, and having had a childhood experience myself that was a traumatic experience that I really stuffed away for, almost 47 years until I really dealt with it. And, that combination, along with having my own children and seeing young girls being abused on video,
yeah,
and just
made it real.
Well, it was very real, because one of the children that I had to unfortunately observe and witness being abused and attempt to identify as a victim was wearing similar clothing to what my young daughter was wearing at the same time. It was like a Barney outfit. It was a popular type of t-shirt and shorts that kids would wear. So, seeing that, it really played on my head. It took me to a different level, like I said before the break. And when I was finally crippled with this disorder, it took me probably a year and a half to really accept the fact that I wasn't going to go back to policing. My PTSD was such that it wasn't going to allow me to go back into law enforcement in any capacity. And those were diagnoses made by 4 different psychiatrists and 2 psychologists, and everybody concurred that this is not going to be your future in any way, shape, or form. PTSD affects people in very different ways. I mean, it affected one man in one way, and what I may have seen that almost threw me into my grave may not have even affected another person, and vice versa. So, I think it's important that in law enforcement we recognize that men and women that are struggling through post-traumatic, individually, it's a case-by-case scenario when it comes to these types of incidents. And it's not just law enforcement. Doctors, nurses, firemen, security, jail guards, a woman who's been teaching her whole life and was verbally threatened by a bully student could easily slip into a very severe case of post-traumatic stress disorder. So, we're not unique to it. It is unique in a sense in policing that we, in terms of Jimmy and I, are actually speaking about it because it is a big bravado career and profession that we chose to embark on. And most men and women in the navy blue or black choose not to show that because, really at the end of the day, if you show any weakness to the bad guy on the street, they're going to eat you up. But the reality is if you show any weakness inside, our own eat us up. And that's what happened to me. So, today I'm healthy, I'm whole. I'm not without symptoms. I go through it on a regular basis. I can go through a month or 2 months at a time where I don't have any symptoms. I can go through a 3 or 4 day period. I know it's coming on. Jim and I spoke about this before the show, and it's, these feelings start to come, and you know that it's coming, and you just have to fight through it. It's a tough road, but sometimes they last for weeks at a time for me. And you know, I just understand, I have to understand that as long as I can process it, and you know, I was given certain tools, and you know, there's ways that I need to actually get myself out of that bad place again. And at the end of it, I know that I'm going to be whole. You know, the key for me is not to pick up a drink or a drug, because that's where it'll take me to the next level again. You know,
and that's really important too. We the three of us being clean and sober is a big part of a lot. I'm going to say a lot. A lot of people generally, in dealing with their issues, try to do it while they're still using. The importance of doing it clean and sober is vital, Jimmy.
Oh, absolutely. I think when we talk about any, you know, addiction or dependency, drinking, drugging, eating, not eating, gambling, sex. Recently, I've heard of video games. People that immerse themselves in video games don't come out of the house. We're trying to escape from that emotional turmoil, and to me, it's slow suicide. You're hoping that you don't have to get up and face the world again. I'll go to an altered reality, and that you know, I'm gone. That we're done. And I think. Again, what we're talking about is in recovery is facing yourself. It's the hardest decision to do. You know, it's easy to you know, say I'll ignore it and I'll drink and whatever. That's the easy thing to do. And the people that say suck it up, again, that's the easy thing to do. But to confront yourself and say, I can remember going into Homewood, totally broken, day one, and saying, can this group of people, because you meet in a group. Yeah. This is me. This is where I am. I need help. Please. I can't do this anymore. And they dealt with my dependency, and then I was able to face myself and say I was wrong. What I was doing was wrong. And
you have to get honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a key thing that a lot of people that are having trouble moving forward with, is that they're not being honest and saying I was wrong. And that's, I think, the greatest gift that you can have. What I find in a way is PTSD has been like a gift that I've gotten to know myself. And you know, it's a journey of self-discovery now. Where can I go without that dependency? And the truth is up. There's nowhere you can go but up. And everything since then, it's such a difference, such a change, a different person.
Yep, I've heard people say that. You know, I'm glad I became an alcoholic, because without that, I never would have really got to know me. I never would have got to discover who I really am, because in my case, I would have hidden behind so many masks. But it's so important, and especially as we talk about PTSD, but in other cases, when people go to deal with, I was speaking at a place yesterday, and I said, you know, the alcohol, the drugs, whatever. I mean, you can put the plug in the jug or stop using, but until you deal with what the deal is, you know, the issues, until you deal with the sexual abuse, until you deal with the PTSD, until you deal with that stuff, nothing's going to change. You know, the definition of PTSD in your book here is a severe set of symptoms that can develop following a critical incident, but in many cases, officers who suffer from it go untreated for lengthy periods of time because the symptoms are not recognized. Even if they are, officers are faced with stigma, lack of support from superiors, shaming, etc., which often lead to addiction and suicide. And oh my goodness, we're down to like 2 minutes. We haven't even touched on stuff I wanted to talk about. Touch on that in about a minute, guys. Talk about some of the symptoms that guys have to look out for.
Well, the symptoms, outbursts of anger, flashbacks, nightmares, feeling as though that the incident is reoccurring, based on a trigger, an innocuous object in the room. Your pen is pointing in my direction right now. To me, that's significant. If you've ever been attacked with a weapon, that's significant. To most people, it's a pen, right? But these are the things but this is the things again that hypervigilance, again, not sleeping. And again, you see, I think the reason there's a stigma is because people think it's contagious, right? So you know, I don't want to hear about that because I think a lot of people are close to acknowledging that perhaps they might have PTSD or at least post-traumatic stress, or they live in ambient fear or anxiety. But if I acknowledge that you have it, then I'm closer to acknowledging that I have it.
Right.
And I think that's part of the reason we're stigmatized and kind of pushed over there. And
really quickly, I want to get this in. Out on a Cliff, what's your website?
www.outonacliff.com. My book is being offered right now as a free ebook download. So please go to the site if it helps you in any way at all. Then all the hard work was worth it for me.
And you did it with your dad?
I did.
And I'm sorry we didn't get to that story. I'm going to have you guys back because there's so much more I wanted to talk about, and I knew a half hour wasn't going to do it. Even the hour show that I used to have wouldn't have done it. How can people get Cracking the Armor?
www.bremnerassociates.com.
Say that again?
Bremnerassociates.com.
Okay. And if you have any questions about these two books or any more information about this show, just go to hopeformen.ca. It's really important that if you have questions about post-traumatic stress disorder, just go to hopeformen.ca and get a hold of me, and I'll get you in touch with these guys. But if you did get, if the websites are up on the screen, go to them, talk to them. These guys will talk to you one-on-one, okay? You don't have, there's no filters. They will talk to you one-on-one. Listen, guys, it's been a real pleasure. I thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come down here and be a part of this program. I also want to thank Nick and Corey on cameras and Ryan and Harmony in the control booth. And guys, it's been a real pleasure having you here. And more importantly for you out there, thank you so much for watching, and we'll be here again next week. And we'll catch you then. Thanks very much for watching The Advocate with Glenn Allen. Take care.